They used to say that if you worked hard, followed the rules, and kept your head down, you could build a good life in America. A house, a family, a stable job, that was the deal. But here's the uncomfortable truth: that deal doesn't exist anymore. For millions of people, the American dream isn't just out of reach, it's been quietly replaced by something darker. We've gone from a nation that built opportunity to one that rents it out at 12% interest. You feel it every time you scroll through Zillow, every time you check your grocery bill, every time you see a 25-year-old with two jobs and no chance of ever owning a home. Something's broken, something deep. And for the first time in modern history, most Americans actually agree the dream that built the country is dying. According to a Newsweek survey, nearly 80% of Americans under 30 don't believe the American dream is real anymore. And it's not just the young. Even people over 65, the generation that once lived that dream, now admit it's slipping away. So what happened? How did the world's richest nation lose faith in its own promise? To answer that, we have to go back and look at what the dream actually meant in the first place. For decades, the American dream wasn't just about money. It was about freedom. The freedom to build a better life no matter where you started. Your parents could be poor, your accent could be thick. But if you worked hard, you could own something: a home, a business, a future. But today, that ladder of opportunity has rotted from the bottom up. Your birth date, your zip code, your parents' income, these are the new gatekeepers. Whether you'll live as a debt-dependent renter or a financially free owner is now decided long before you even start playing the game. Let's start with the most obvious example: housing. In just 4 years, the cost of owning a home in America has doubled. Not increased, doubled. Mortgage payments are about 100% higher than they were before the pandemic. 4 years ago, the average buyer could handle a 3% interest rate. Today, it's closer to 7%. And the income needed to afford a typical home? About $106,000 a year. That's what Zillow says you need just to comfortably make payments. The problem? The average household earns only $81,000. So what happens? People get priced out. They rent, they move back home, or they give up. The national median rent is now over $2,100 per month. That's not for a fancy downtown condo, that's the middle of the market. And if you're under 35, you probably already know this story. You work, you save. But every time you check your savings account, the goalpost moves farther away. Inflation eats your paycheck. Interest rates crush your dream. And here's the part nobody talks about. It's not just economics, it's identity. For decades, owning a home was the symbol of arrival. It meant you made it. You had a stake in society, a neighborhood, a mailbox with your name on it. Today, fewer young people are buying homes than any generation before them. And when you take away that symbol of stability, everything else starts to fall apart: family, community, faith in the system. In fact, America has now crossed a line in history. For the first time ever, there are more single adults aged 18 to 55 with no children than married adults with kids. That's never happened before. And 40% of all births are now out of wedlock. That might sound like a social stat, but it's actually economic. Because when families shrink and communities fracture, the demand on government explodes. People turn to the state for what family and faith used to provide. Loneliness becomes policy, debt becomes culture. And it's not just loneliness, it's addiction. Post-pandemic, addiction rates across America are still sky high. And I'm not just talking about opioids. I'm talking about digital addiction, the constant dopamine drip of social media, porn, video games, and weed. Studies show that marijuana use now outpaces alcohol use among young people. And the harder drugs, fentanyl, meth, cocaine, they're taking more than 100,000 American lives every single year. That's a 500% increase since the year 2000. Deaths of despair, that's the term researchers use. But it's more than data. It's what happens when an entire culture starts to lose faith in tomorrow. Think about it. What does success even mean today? For most people, it's not owning a house or starting a business. It's surviving inflation. It's keeping your head above water. And that's where the death of the American dream really starts. Not with economics, but with meaning. Because beyond the paychecks and the mortgages, something else has vanished. The sense that life in America means something bigger than survival. Civic literacy, the basic knowledge of how our country works, has collapsed. A U.S. Chamber of Commerce survey found that over 70% of Americans fail a basic civics quiz. Half can't even name the branch of government that makes laws. When people stop understanding how the system works, they stop believing they have any control over it. That's how hope dies. not in riots or revolutions, but in apathy. And here's the brutal irony. America calls itself the land of self-government, but most people now feel powerless in their own lives. At the same time, religion, once the moral compass of the country, has faded into the background. Nearly 30% of Americans are now religiously unaffiliated. Only about 1 in 5 attend a weekly service. That might not sound dramatic, but even John Adams, America's second president, warned that the Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. Without that shared foundation, laws become loopholes, and culture becomes chaos. So now we've got a perfect storm: economic pressure, social isolation, moral confusion. People are anxious, addicted, angry, and tired. That's why figures like Jordan Peterson can sell out arenas in Middle America, not because people are obsessed with self-help, but because they're starving for meaning, for a framework, for something that feels real again. It's also why politics feels so broken, because both sides are talking about policies, when what people really want is purpose. And as we approach another election, it's not just a political battle anymore, it's an identity crisis. The real question isn't who will fix the economy, it's who will restore belief. Because at its core, the American dream was never about money. It was about faith. Faith that if you tried, it would matter. That you could build something. That your kids could have more than you did. But when people lose that faith, you can raise the minimum wage, cut interest rates, or build 1,000 stimulus packages, and it still won't be enough. The deeper problem is trust. Trust in government, in media, in institutions, all at record lows. People feel manipulated, used, and disposable. Meanwhile, the wealthy, the ones who did keep the dream alive, are no longer investing in their communities. They're investing in escape. Second passports, offshore assets, international real estate. The new American dream isn't to build a home here, it's to leave here once you've made enough money. And this is where the story takes a global turn. Because when opportunity dies in one place, it doesn't disappear, it moves. The dream migrates. For a lot of people, the new version of the American dream isn't in America at all. It's in countries with lower costs, safer communities, or smarter policies. From Portugal to Panama, from Thailand to Texas suburbs that feel more like small towns than cities. The pursuit of freedom and ownership hasn't vanished, it's just changing shape. And that's what makes this story complicated. Because if the American dream was about freedom and ownership, those two things still exist, just not evenly distributed. If you're born into wealth, you're still free to buy assets that grow while everyone else rents. You're still free to travel, to diversify, to hedge against inflation. But if you're part of the working or middle class, that dream now feels like a trap. The harder you run, the faster the treadmill goes. So let's be honest, maybe the American dream didn't die overnight. Maybe it was slowly sold off. One mortgage, one tuition loan, one payday advance at a time. The tragedy is, most people didn't even notice it happening. Because when the system takes everything except hope, it leaves you too tired to fight back. That's where we are now, a society that measures success by how well we hide our exhaustion. But there's still one thing that could bring the dream back, and it's not a politician, a billionaire, or a bailout. It's ownership. The dream always started with ownership. Not just property, but ownership of your time, your habits, your future. When people stop depending on the system for everything, that's when the system changes. When communities build things together, when people reconnect, when money starts serving life instead of the other way around, that's when the dream starts breathing again. It's not gone yet, it's buried, under debt, distraction, and division, but it's still there. And maybe that's the real story. The American dream isn't dead, it's evolving. It's leaving the hands of governments and corporations and returning to the people who are willing to rebuild it differently. Maybe smaller, maybe quieter, but more real. Because the truth is, dreams don't die, they adapt. Maybe the next American dream won't be about a white picket fence or a 30-year mortgage. Maybe it'll be about financial independence, creative freedom, global citizenship. Maybe it's not about where you live, but how. And that means it's still worth fighting for. Because as long as people still believe that tomorrow can be better than today, even by 1 inch, the dream isn't dead. It's just changing its address. So the question now isn't who killed the American dream. It's who's going to bring it back. Watch the next video and see how the people who understand where the money's moving next always win. And if you're serious about staying ahead of that shift, hit subscribe, you'll want to see what's coming next.